Hey all, and welcome to my vlog. My name is Erin, and this is Diversity in World Building Part 2. If you haven't watched Part 1 yet, I will link that in the description below for you to check out. Most of this should apply to any story that you're writing, but I am leaning a little bit more towards fantasy world building. Number 3, neurodivergence and mental health. Neurodiversity refers to the differences in our brains across the entire human species. Neurodivergence is the differences in the brain or cognitive function outside of what we would consider normal or neurotypical. This would cover things like autism, ADD, dyslexia, and other disorders. There is no definitive list as to what all falls under the neurodivergent umbrella. That being said, for the purposes of this video, when I say neurodivergent, assume that I am talking about anything that could fall under neurodivergence and all mental health disorders. There is a huge list of options if you want to write about a character that is neurodivergent. The most common ones that people are going to know are anxiety and depression, but there are so many more, including OCD, PTSD, personality disorders, eating disorders, psychosis, schizophrenia, etc. 3.1 Awareness and treatment. Does the society you're writing about acknowledge that mental illness and neurodiversity exists? Are there treatments available for the people who want them, and are they accessible? There is the option to lean into some of these superstitious reasons for why people develop neurodiversity, but I'm going to let you do your own research into those because they're all pretty offensive. 3.2 Social attitudes and characters. Is there a social stigma against neurodivergence? And if so, is that a blanket stigma or is it condition specific? How do your characters feel about their neurodiversity, and what accommodations do they have to make to manage it and navigate the world? Number 4, sexual orientation and attraction. We'll start off with some clarifying information in case anyone is uncertain, and we'll be covering gender in the next category, so I won't be talking about it just yet. I find all of these easiest to understand if you conceptualize them as a spectrum. 4.1 Orientation. Sexual orientation is a person's sexual identity related to the gender that they are attracted to. In terms of the spectrum, you would have heterosexual on one end, homosexual on the other, and bi or pansexual covering the bases between. If you need some clarity for these, heterosexual means you are attracted to a gender that is not your own. Homosexual means you are attracted to a gender the same as your own, and bi or pansexual means that you are attracted to a gender like or unlike your own. 4.2 Attraction. In terms of attraction, there are a few forms, but for the sake of simplicity, I am just going to focus on sexual and romantic attraction. Romantic attraction is where you get heart feels for a person, and sexual attraction is where you get sexy bit feels for a person. A person could be romantically attracted to someone but not sexually attracted to them, or vice versa, or both or neither. On the sexual attraction spectrum, you're going to have allosexual on one end, asexual on the other, and the gray sexual umbrella covering the bases between. The same goes for the romantic spectrum, where you would have alloromantic on one end, aromantic on the other, and gray romantic covering in between. The allo prefix means that you experience normal levels of romantic attraction or sexual attraction. Gray means that you experience some, and this may be under very specific circumstances. And the a prefix means that you do not experience it at all. 4.3 The world as it is. It is very difficult to know just how many people fall outside of being alloromantic or allosexual, partially because of the danger and stigma in so many countries, but also because it can require some pretty deep personal introspection to figure out. Societal pressure, internalized homophobia, and other factors can suppress the numbers because people may not know, or they might not be comfortable sharing. Corrective rape, conversion therapies, ostracization, and any number of other harmful things are a very real issue for people who fall at the other areas of those spectrums. So you cannot use the excuse of, oh, only a small percentage of people fall into that, because we don't know. We cannot know for sure given the state of the world. 4.4 Social attitudes and characters. Is sexual orientation or sexual attraction a social identifier? Are there stigmas or barriers to certain types of relationships? How do your characters feel about the different facets of their sexual identity? When did your characters discover their sexual orientation and attraction? Not knowing yet and finding out later, questioning, or knowing for 100% are all fine. Keep in mind, this also applies to heterosexual and allosexual characters as well. Dig into how your characters know what they know about themselves. Number 5, gender. Gender comes with 3 related categories, and those are biological sex, gender identity, and gender expression. You should know all 3 of these aspects for all of your characters. 5.1 Biological sex. Biological sex is all about anatomy, chromosomes, and hormones. Under this spectrum, you would be labeled as male, female, or intersex. There are multiple chromosomal options for biological sex that will affect your characters differently. When people are trying to argue about it, biological sex will typically be reduced down to anatomy, aka which genitals you have, but they are missing a whole set of factors, and also they're probably transphobic. 5.2 Gender identity. Gender identity is your psychological self. Under this spectrum, you would be labeled as man, woman, non-binary, genderqueer, agender, etc. There is also gender fluid, in which your gender identity can move along the spectrum. 5.3 Gender expression. Gender expression is how you communicate your gender. The typical divisions under this are masculine, feminine, and androgynous. Gender expression will affect how your characters dress, how they cut and style their hair, what personal ornamentation they have, etc. This will also be affected based on how you've chosen to develop your society and what the rules are surrounding gender expression. 5.4 The gender binary and transgender people. The gender binary is a social construct that shoves people into one of two boxes, whether they belong there or not. The gender binary and the whole "there's only two genders" bullshit is a double whammy of racism and transphobia. Many Native cultures have historically recognized that there are more than two genders. At birth, gender assignment tends to get you labeled as a boy or a girl. And historically, that label has always coincided with what genitalia you possess. People who are transgender were assigned a gender at birth that does not match their gender identity. In case you weren't sure, transgender is also an umbrella term that encapsulates non-binary, genderqueer, agender, etc. But it's important to note that those people may not necessarily identify as transgender. If you are not transgender or anything under that umbrella, then you would qualify as a cisgender person. 5.5 Gender diversity. You should be including more than one gender in your story. Unless there is an extremely specific circumstances like in Lord of the Flies, you should not have a story that is 100% dudes. At the very least, you gotta include women. That is like the barest possible minimum. Please include people who push back against the gender binary and those who identify outside of it. Trans and non-binary people have always existed, so you cannot pull out the excuse of historical accuracy. 5.6 Social attitudes and characters. What are the biological sex, gender identity, and gender expression of your characters? How do they feel about each facet? Are there social stigmas or restrictions surrounding biological sex, gender identity, or gender expression? How do those facets influence how your characters interact with others, whether they share the same or have different facets? How does it influence their relationships? So that is all I've got for you today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope it was helpful. The next world building video will continue on part 3 of 3, and we'll be covering religious diversity, age, body size, shape, and appearance, socioeconomic status, including harm in your work, other things to consider, and what you can do to mitigate harm. If you liked this video, give it a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe. If you'd like to be notified as soon as I upload, then ring that bell. All my social media will be in the description below. Both of my books, Olympian Confessions, Hades and Persephone, and Olympian Confessions, Hera, are available now in ebook and paperback. If you would like your manuscript critiqued by me, you can check out my new critique service on my website. If you've enjoyed my videos and learned something from them, consider being part of my Patreon family. Thanks again for watching, and I will see you all next week with another video. Bye!